Hello everyone, I am Captain Ashmerica from What Culture, and I'm here today to do a lovely ranking in the wake of the MCU's Phase 3 seeing itself out. In short, the Infinity Saga is over. Thanos has boiled his last prickly pear and fingered his last gauntlet. Veterans have retired or died, stories are over, and we are looking out towards a brave new world of mutants, fantastic foursomes, and a whole new raft of characters. The pain of Avengers Endgame is still very real, and there are some other strong feelings too. I'm looking at you, thick Thor, call me. So before Marvel closes the book on this chapter with Spider-Man Far From Home, let's look back and work out exactly which one is best. We've been on a journey over the past decade after all, and the road hasn't always been easy. With that in mind then, let's get to it. This is every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie ranked from worst to best. 22. Thor: The Dark World. It looked like great news when Game of Thrones director Alan Taylor replaced Kenneth Branagh for this sequel, but boy, were we wrong! He fudged the Dark World horribly, though that is not without a hearty helping of studio interference too. Though Loki is great, Taylor's vision became just too dull and too humorless, missing the necessary self-conscious campiness that Branagh used so well. No one really loves this movie, and it is easy to see why. 21. Iron Man 2. As with The Dark World, Iron Man 2 has some good ideas, like Tony's pseudo-addiction and downward spiral, and Sam Rockwell's excellent Justin Hammer, but it is as lost as the original is confident and focused. Downey Jr. and Rockwell are great, but Mickey Rourke's Whiplash is not so great, and the action is silly without the right balance of intercast chemistry that works so well elsewhere in the MCU. 20. The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk really isn't quite as bad as it is often accused of being, which seems like an empty comment since it's all the way down here, but still. Ed Norton isn't as good as a Bruce Banner as Mark Ruffalo, but he is still better than Eric Banner, and the story here is a lot more traditional than Ang Lee's version. It has its moments, but again, studio meddling derailed it. It's just a very obvious case of too many cooks and not all of them being qualified. 19. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't a bad film by any means, but it suffered partly because of its weird release placement and for the fact that it was always going to be just an Avengers Endgame precursor for a lot of people. It's all a little mild, even though the characters are excellent, the effects are solid, and the performances full of the same charm as were in the original. More of the same isn't a negative, but it is not so great compared to the others on this list. 18. Thor. It might rank pretty low, but Thor is a very good movie. Thanks to Kenneth Branagh's eyes for theatricality and the perfect casting of both Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth, it is a far bigger success than it had any right to be. Loki stands out a mile, but the story, a blend of Norse mythology and Crocodile Dundee, is what we stay for. 17. Iron Man. Luckily, Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige were able to convince the studio that their judgment on the casting of Robert Downey Jr. was wrong, and that he was a perfect Tony Stark. Because without him and this movie, there would be no MCU. In the end, the film is a vehicle for RDJ to show off, but there is a strong enough story and enough conflict with Jeff Bridges' Obadiah Stane to add substance beneath the surface. This is the OG movie that started it all, so whack it in your Marvel shrine and praise Feige for its existence. 16. Captain America: The First Avenger. Despite how good it is to see Cap in the modern MCU era, it is a real shame that we didn't get to see more of him alongside the Howling Commandos beating up Nazis and Hydra. Because this, the only MCU war movie, is really great stuff. Chris Evans is perfect, Sebastian Stan is great as the roguish Bucky, and Hugo Weaving, aka Elrond, steals the show as Red Skull, with a load of other fun stuff thrown into the mix too. 15. Captain Marvel. The characters in Captain Marvel are great. The performances, particularly Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, and Ben Mendelsohn, are all wonderful. And there is enough cat love in there to sink a whole ship full of catnip and furry stuff. They're good cats, aren't they? It's tempting to judge the film purely on its political importance, which ranks it very, very high in the MCU. But as a film on its own merits, and to base it fairly in that respect, it is about the level of the Phase 1 movies. Still very good. Give me more goose. But yeah, we're going to put it at 15. 14. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange feels like it's making technology work at its limits, and it seems that Scott Derrickson's horror background proved the right experience to exploring the Source's weirder elements. It's in the effects work and Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Strange that the film soars most, really, and both of those are fantastic. Mads Mikkelsen's villain isn't great on the other hand, but that's a problem we've had before from MCU movies, so it is not particularly fatal here. 13. Ant-Man. Ant-Man has to rank as one of the MCU's biggest surprises, considering the difficult production road that it had along the way. Originally intended to be a non-MCU movie by Edgar Wright, the sticking point that ultimately cost him the job, it has only become a heist comedy when Peyton Reed came on board. With his comedy experience and the charm of good old Paul Rudd and Michael Pena, it was a winner even before the impressive set pieces and strong heist story. Who doesn't love a good dose of Rudd to make a movie work? No one. 12. Avengers Age of Ultron. Even though it proved a difficult production for Joss Whedon, the second Avengers movie still hit a lot of high points. Crucially, it furthered already established MCU threads, in particular Tony Stark's spiral into guilt, and introduced a story far more focused than the first Avengers movie was. James Spader's Ultron is a joy to watch. The introduction of the twins and Vision work well, and Hawkeye finally gets a chance to do something. 11. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. There were lots of accusations that James Gunn's follow-up to the original Guardians of the Galaxy was a little too in love with itself to be a truly great movie. But the sequel is just as infectious as its predecessor. It's cocky and funny, much like me, but it is massively heartfelt and totally convincing in its emotional stakes, and Kurt Russell's ego is a good addition as the villain. The way he progresses Star-Lord, Yondu, Nebula, and Gamora in particular should be taught in Characterization 101. 10. Thor Ragnarok. Even despite the dramatic weight of the story Taika Waititi tells in Thor Ragnarok, and of the major 3 comic book arcs that it's based upon, he turned the colourful intergalactic romp into a joyful, strange celebration of his own imagination. But it's not just all silliness. There's a serious look at Thor's quest to feel worthy, and it almost feels like a coming-of-age story with the great addition of a villain in Cate Blanchett's Hela. 9. Black Panther. Considering the astronomical hype that met Black Panther's announcement, it is remarkable that Ryan Coogler's standalone for T'Challa managed to actually live up to the expectations. That he then even surpassed even some of the most enthusiastic wishes is simply stunning. It looks incredible, even with a few of the dodgy CGI bits. The character development is great, and in Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger, we have one of the true greats of comic book movie villains. Something the MCU doesn't have a lot of. 8. Spider-Man Homecoming. Homecoming's success came down to a few things. First, the exceptional casting of Tom Holland, both the best Peter Parker and the best Spider-Man, then the John Hughes-inspired high school story, and also Michael Keaton's excellent Vulture. He too immediately ranked as one of the top 3 villains in the entire MCU when he debuted. The film is charming and nostalgic and offers lots of promise for what's going to come next for the web-slinger. 7. Iron Man 3. In Shane Black's hands, Iron Man 3 becomes a nostalgic, swaggering buddy action movie with the chemistry between Iron Man and War Machine pushed far better than it had been before, and Stark struggles with PTSD adding an interesting and grown-up undercurrent. The action is stellar, the story excellent, though the sidelining of Maya Hansen was a little unfair, and the writing smart. And no, the twist wasn't rubbish at all, it was good, it was interesting. Did you see it coming? 6. The Avengers. With huge expectations on the first team-up, Joss Whedon proved himself more than capable of the job, and his restraint in using Loki as the main villain and allowing the Avengers the space to grow as a team was an inspired move. Crucially, Whedon convinced everyone that there was a justification for the Avengers existing without a cartoonish villain. And while the third act introduction of the Chitauri was a little uneven, the film is the perfect blend of spectacle and depth otherwise. 5. Avengers Endgame. After 11 years, we finally got the white-hot hyped payoff to the Infinity Saga in the shape of Avengers Endgame, which is a triumph of spectacle and emotional storytelling that manages to still have smaller moments for its key characters. It's not perfect, but it is certainly the perfect way to end that story and the stories of Iron Man and Captain America. And every single complaint has a justification or an answer in how incredibly entertaining the whole thing is. It's good, go and watch it. 4. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. The Russos, at this point best known for You, Me and Dupree, turned Captain America's sequel into a 1970s-like political intrigue movie dealing in espionage and surveillance state anxiety, and introducing the definitive idea of superhero registration to the MCU in a big way. And even with those big ideas on show, the success of the sequel boils down to something much more personal: the conflict between two childhood best friends, which is what really makes it. 3. Guardians of the Galaxy. It might have been a strange prospect, but thanks in part to exceptional casting and incredible marketing, James Gunn laughed in the face of suggestions that audiences would need to know the team first to care. He built a story about oddballs and rejects coming together for the greater good, but still committing themselves to being assholes, which is impossible not to fall in love with. My personal favourite MCU movie, and an absolute banger of a film. If you don't love this one, you can at the very least respect its soundtrack. That's all you're gonna do. 2. Captain America: Civil War. Geniusly, the Russos took something as big as superhero registration and made it only a vehicle for a portrait of the dynamic between four men. This might be a big story, but what matters is the personal conflict between Cap and Bucky, Cap and Iron Man and Bucky, and all three with Zemo. On top of that, there are huge fan service moments, great character introductions, and of course, that ever-loving spectacle. But the intimacy of the writing is what really sets it apart. 1. Avengers: Infinity War. And finally, it is Infinity War that takes the crown. The Russos achieved the unthinkable with this, super-injecting the pillars of the MCU, wrapping up 10 years of storytelling in an organic, entertaining matter, and offering some of the franchise's best ever moments. It's not as tight a story as The Winter Soldier or Civil War, some could argue, but the spectacle here is amazing. And if we're to judge movies on the way they make us feel, then Infinity War wins by a country mile for devastating our insides like a bad Taco Bell. And that's our list. How would you rank the MCU films released so far? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, I've been Ash, and these four walls have been What Culture. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!